Welcome back, everyone. We are here. I have Amy here. She is actually one of my neighbors. And we had our big second annual Walk of Love gathering on Saturday. And you have been the last 2 years, correct?
Correct.
So I'm going to ask her a few questions about this. We are going to have a conversation, and she has this lovely top on that I'm so happy about. It's very springish. This is the second week of March this video will be featured in, and I'm gonna have Judy on here sometime to recap the Walk of Love gathering as a team, and hopefully Laura Ann will be able to get on here too. So until I can get them together again, we're going to continue to interview local widows and widowers. We have a few on tap coming up, and I'm excited to hear Amy's story. And so first, thank you for coming onto my porch here for a little porchside chat.
Thank you for the invitation.
And so since you have come to the Walk of Love the last 2 years, which is the first 2 years, let's put it like that, can you kind of give your sentiment on it? And then we're going to get into your story, but we'll kind of hop around a few things. But I don't know how many have been back-to-back years, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. One, being able to bring some ladies with you, and some of them who cannot drive, she's picking them up. We're going to get more into that too. But what would you like to share with those watching about gathering in larger groups? What is it about even doing it this time of year around Valentine's? How does that all hit your heart?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me.
Awesome.
And I'm glad that we rescheduled today instead of yesterday.
Yes.
Because yesterday I would have been a nervous wreck. And this morning during my devotions, the Lord sent me, it wasn't a specific piece of scripture. It was just a feeling, it's not an interrogation, it's not a job interview. It's to new friends who are getting to know each other and who used to only have the one commonality as far as being neighbors.
Thank you.
And now we have the fact that we're both widows. And so I am much more relaxed.
And I'm thankful for that, because no, this is not an interrogation. But when you haven't done something like this before, and I will say most everyone has been hesitant. Afterwards, they're like, this wasn't as bad as I thought. I'm like, good. This is just chatting. By chance, we're recording it too. But that is because we just don't know when someone needs to hear this message.
Right.
And putting it on YouTube allows us to kind of archive it. And then when I do not check this all the time, look, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have 100 views on these videos. We have 25 views. They're varying. And I believe that as we continue to post on social media, at least what they say is consistency is key. And so we're continuing to do this, not just to get more views or likes on Facebook or YouTube. We're doing this because I continue to learn from every single widow and widower that I meet.
As you said, everybody's story is different. Just like when you talk about having children, everybody's labor and delivery story is different.
Yes.
It ends up the same.
Yeah.
And everybody's, story of widowhood is different.
Yes.
The differences are in, the length of time you were married, the length of time you've been a widow, how your husband died. That makes a huge difference.
Yes. Can you give us a little bit more into that, your story of that?
I'll try. My husband and I were up at our cabin in the mountains. And, when you say cabin in the mountains, I envision logs and stone and glass. Oh, no, it wasn't anything like that. It was just a little place that we had built out of some scraps from previous jobs of his on family land. But we enjoyed it. We went as often as we could.
Your little getaway.
Exactly. And we were up there trimming trees because they were getting in the way of cutting grass. So we were trimming trees, and we were on the tractor, and it has a scoop on the front. So he was standing in the scoop trimming. And my husband was a construction superintendent. So he was big on safety. He never did anything unless he had scoped it out and knew things were safe. So I didn't have any qualms. He was cutting up over his head, and he cut through a branch and he had not realized there was a branch behind it. And that branch behind it struck him. and it knocked him out, so he
Wow.
couldn't catch himself. And when he fell, he broke his neck. I
Wow.
couldn't see. I saw the branch hit him, and I saw him fall, and I thought, oh, he's going to be hot. He's going to have broken that wrist again, and he might even have a broken hip. And I was thinking, well, this is my opportunity to take care of him.
Absolutely.
And then I stood up, and he was face down on the ground.
Wow.
And I went to him, and he was still alive then, and he tried to speak. And I ran to get my phone, and we have 0 cell reception up there. Wow. And I had to run out towards the road to get reception. And it took, like I said, we're in the middle of nowhere out there in Bedford County, and it took probably about 25 minutes. And meanwhile, I did not get a heartbeat, and I was doing CPR. And they did, when they came, they hooked him up to a monitor, and they didn't even do anything else.
Wow. Wow.
And it was October 8th of 2021. And my daughters told me later, I blanked it out. My daughters told me later, my mother died on October 8th too.
Your mother?
Mm-hmm,
wow.
Mm-hmm. And I had, I had forgotten that or blocked it out or whatever. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so, I've known folks who had to watch their husband die, by inches from an illness, various illnesses, cancer or pulmonary fibrosis or whatever. And I know that that's difficult.
Yes.
To watch someone leaving you like that. But I feel like at least you have the time to talk about things, talk about good times, what we might have done, to say I love you one more time.
Right. Yes.
And I'm a little jealous of that because I didn't get that opportunity.
Right.
Something else that, and these are very, very human foibles. Something else that makes me jealous these days is when I see an older couple walking together, holding hands or whatever, or even just eating in a restaurant.
You miss those times,
right? Yeah.
And they were good.
Your widowhood was sudden too.
Absolutely. I didn't see the before, so there was no moments of countdown. But the sudden shock to call 911 is an interesting experience. And and it's hard to even dial 911 because the shock is,
you don't want to admit that there's really something wrong.
right.
He's going to wake up and he's going to be mad with me for calling 911 because we live in the city and they're going to charge you $800. Yeah. He's not going to be happy with you.
Yeah.
And I was thinking the same thing. I kept calling his name, over and over and over. And even as a retired nurse, I was totally in denial. And that's been a problem for me even yet. Denial. Okay. I keep thinking, okay, Lord, I've been punished enough. I get it. I'll be better. I promise. You can, let this end now. And the finality of it's been what has been the most difficult for me. Yeah.
Interesting. And this is the beauty of hearing the rationale. I didn't really care about how the brain worked, to be honest, before loss. And after that, neuroscience and things about neuroplasticity is a term about how we can grow the brain, actually, how new neurons can connect these lines and we can think new thoughts. This is becoming more understood in our 21st century, and it is so fascinating to me. One, she's using the terms of, I blocked some things out. That is one way to say it. I have also learned that it's our brain protecting us. We really can't absorb but so much. And so it's kind of just compartmentalizing some things for us. I know that the day that been passed, people gave me some accounts in the hospital, no recollection. In the room with me, don't remember it. And so that's fascinating. And I have told many people, and I don't have all the research on it, that I'm going to ask you the same question. There's a fog, a grief fog that kind of comes on, that so why is this also interesting to me, y'all? Because I have gone to funerals yes, I'm younger, but I've gone to funerals, but I have never heard anyone talk about the physiological part, I mean, yes, we've seen the sadness, but I didn't realize how many areas it actually affects. And I had not heard really that many, no one really talk about it. They just kept on, I guess. And then when it happened to me, I'm like, there's a huge gap here. Like I feel like a deer in headlights, another term I would use is a sitting duck. So there were a lot of like uncertain the safety, there's a safety issue now. I don't remember my grandmother talking about any of this, and she was a widow for at least 23 years, but she was in her I guess 60s, late 60s when it happened. And it was a sudden loss with my grandfather with a heart attack. So my mother's dad had a heart attack, my dad's dad had a heart attack, and now my husband. So if that's not alarming, you know, fear can become a real thing when you've gone through sudden loss. And I know that at least in our church, there were women very concerned, like who would be next.
Oh yes, yeah, that always comes to mind. And you mentioned not knowing how to act. In other words, when Gary was gone, when they had pronounced him dead, we had to wait because they had to call the funeral home, which is 12, 15 miles away. It was 2 hours before they came, to take him. And I thought, what do I do now? Um, do I allow myself to scream and cry and throw myself on the
Right.
ground, or
Do you say all
do I
your
have to
goodbyes?
maintain some dignity? What do I do? Should I act as sad as I feel or as empty, bereft as I felt, or do I have the stiff upper lip? How do I act? Will they think I'm not grieving? If I don't
Right.
cry?
Thank you.
And also going forward from there,
Right.
everything changes.
Absolutely.
Every
Overnight.
aspect of your life
Absolutely.
changes because now I'm managing a household
By
where my
yourself.
husband did at least 60% of the
Yep.
stuff.
Thank you.
He used to spend a couple days a week in the yard. We had the nicest yard on the block. Um, and I don't now. My granddaughter told me the other day, Graham, your yard looks like cheddar broccoli soup.
Mm.
But I do the best I can, and my
Yes.
son-in-law has been a huge help. But I feel like a whole different person
Person.
almost.
Thank you.
The Amy before was I mean, I hugged everybody. I'm of
Mm.
Irish ancestry. I hug everybody, and now I find myself reluctant to hug men. If they have a wife, I'm afraid of what she may think because that she's on the
Yep.
hunt now because she's a widow. And of
Thank
course,
you.
you, as young as you are,
I
especially,
cannot do it.
right,
Okay.
right, mm-mm,
Thank you for bringing this up. It's awkward.
very.
Um, to be honest, I had been in, even as a teenager, in relationships. I was loyal. So I really had been with a boy, man, whatever, since I was 15 and always had that protector or whatever you want to call it. So to be 36, I'm like this, and I was very open in the beginning, like more huggy, because I started to um appreciate life and realize we may not get next Sunday to hug them again.
That's right.
And then somewhere I tell folks, y'all, if you can just get past that 2 year itch or whatever they call it thing, widows are more vulnerable, absolutely, in that beginning time. And there's a missing there. There's a lack for sure. And and I said, I can't be that huggy anymore because it is getting misinterpreted, And even now, and this is not to knock anyone, but she brought it up, okay? So I'm just affirming that even at different ages here, I can't call on I don't feel comfortable calling on married men. And post COVID, most of our lives are pretty full. For whatever reason, it is harder to do everyday tasks and takes more physically from us. And so to ask a man who has been busy already to take away from time with his wife and his family to help you doesn't feel comfortable to me to ask.
Right. Thankfully for me, my son-in-law is just 3 doors down, and he has been, a godsend.
Absolutely.
Well, God has sent who I needed when I needed them. My daughters, my sons-in-law, especially Matthew, my sisters, my sister-in-law, my church family, neighbors. Along the way, even today, um, he sends who I need when I need him.
Awesome.
You want to hear the biggest blessing lately?
Yes.
Last August, my family and I were hiking in Smoky Mountains, which we do every year. And we were on a familiar trail, but Hurricane Helene had changed it, and we didn't know. Roots and rocks, and it was bad. And
You didn't know before you went.
right,
Okay.
right, yeah.
Okay.
And so we went on the way to the waterfall, sat, took pictures, dipped our feet, etc. We're on our way back, and we were within sight of the trailhead. And I said to my daughter, I said, "Well, baby, looks like we're going to make it." About 30 seconds later, I fell. And I knew I had injured my ankle. And I thought, oh, shucks, I'm going to have to wear an ace bandage the rest of the week, and I won't get to hike anymore at all. And I looked down, and my toes are looking at me. And I thought, oh, shucks. That's not really what I said. Sorry.
Thank you for the edited version here.
Yeah. I think we're in for a bigger adventure than that. Well, my daughter, who is the finest kindergarten teacher you'll ever find, but who gets nauseous if you say the word blood, came over. Thankfully, there was no blood. She took one look, and she looked at me, and she says, "Mama, what do I do? How do I help you?" I said, "Baby, just go get us some help, because we're going to need some help."
Yeah.
And they sent the national park
Ranger or whatever.
not a rescue squad, but people who were trained, and they took one look, and they put me out.
Wow.
And did a closed reduction where they just manipulate it back into place.
Okay.
Because it was, and then they took me to Knoxville, to the University of Tennessee, and Dr. Brian Taney was my surgeon. Well, of course, I'd never heard of him, but turns out he's considered the finest orthopedic surgeon in East Tennessee.
Wow.
And I kept saying, because they had given me 4 doses of fentanyl and 2
I think
doses
that's
of
pretty strong.
ketamine. I mean, that's like a horse, serum. So I was out of it, and I kept saying, I got to go home. I got to go home. I wanted to be back here with the orthopedic doctors I knew, right? And he said, well, we'll talk about that tomorrow. And so I apologized to him later for what I said. He said, that's quite all right. But they did another closed reduction, and then they put in an external fixator. It looks like an erector set, because there was so much swelling and stuff. And they did 2 full body scans, because they kept asking me, are you hurt anywhere else? Are you hurt anywhere else? I said, no, I'm not.
Wow.
I didn't even break a nail.
Wow.
But it was pretty devastating. All the bones were broken. 7 screws, 2 plates, and cadaver bone. And
which means they had to put fake in.
One fake cadaver from a living person who had died, and donated the bone.
Bone. Wow.
Yeah. And I have been jokingly saying, well, evidently they couldn't dance or play guitar, because I still can't do that. But anyway, you've got to
find the laughter.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, and you've got to be grateful for that.
Right.
The first thing, of course, I had to stay there a few weeks for the swelling to go down, and then have the final surgery. When we came home, the first thing Dr. Patel said after he'd seen the x-rays and come into the room was, your surgeon did an excellent job.
Wow.
I said, thank you. The next thing out of his mouth was, you're lucky to have your leg. You had no pulse. And I said, well, it was getting pretty numb down there. So anyway, but you saw me walk in. I walked.
Absolutely.
I danced. Still not well, but and so if I had to have that injury, I was in the place to have it. I got the surgeon that is renowned, and then 8 weeks non-weight bearing, And Dr. Patel said, well, you can't be alone if you're non-weight bearing. And I went, what? So once again, all those people I mentioned, my baby daughter stayed with me 17 days, day and night. And then, of course, the other one was back here when we came home. And it was everybody took turns, doing a day shift and a night shift.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, all you can say is God is good. Because
Yes.
I mean, I could have lived without a
Yep.
leg and I would have walked. I have a dear friend who has a below knee amputation. And I thought to myself, I said, well, if Keith can do it, he can show me how to do it.
Right.
But I'm very grateful to still have two legs. And like I said, God put me where I needed to be, and He sent whoever I needed whenever I needed them.
And these are those. I mean, that's mercy. That's his goodness and his kindness.
And grace and mercy.
Absolutely follows us all of our days, and we don't always identify it as that. I know a lot of people use the word luck, and if you're a
I don't ever
believer,
use that word.
yeah, if you're a believer, and here in March, Lucky Charms. I mean, St. Patrick's Day, luck is around, is a lot of the language this time of year. Your 4-leaf clover, all the things, and that is not what happened here. She wasn't lucky that day.
Oh no.
Okay. This was divine providence that all of that worked out for her good and better than she could have, even potentially, if she was even here, potentially she got better care there than she would have gotten here. That's not knocking anyone. It's just saying she didn't design that. And that's the beauty of right place, right time, wrong circumstance. So let's continue with that thought, though. How does it feel as a widow? I hear what you're saying, that when you're having to call on more people for help, how does that feel? Like the neediness, feeling needy? Is that the kind of term you would call it? How have you adjusted to calling on people for help, or has the Lord really put you on their heart and they've called you? Both?
Probably both. At first, I was, feeling rather needy, but I could still do most of the things. Now, my husband was very skilled at everything, carpentry and just everything except electricity. He hated that, but he could do anything. So I very rarely had to do any of the
Right.
outside, even inside
Maintenance.
things that,
Yep.
come
Typical.
every day.
That's right.
But then I had to. Well, my son-in-law can do anything that, almost anything that Gary could do, and he, has taken over.
Filled in the gap.
Every day he comes to see me almost every day because he gets home before the girls get home from school. So he comes down to check, and I usually have something going on. Right now, I have curtains on a rod, and I can't reach them. Now, prior to my fall, I would have gotten out my step stool and gotten up there and hung them.
Mm-hmm.
But if I fall again, I think they're going to have me committed.
Right.
So I am. I have slowed down.
Yeah.
I have become a little more practical, I think, and maybe not smarter, but a little more practical and aware of what can happen.
Right.
Because, slips, trips,
taking a little less risk.
Exactly. Slips, trips, and falls are the enemy of the elderly. And so I'm more careful. So, yeah, I do ask for help much more than I did prior to my fall.
And something that I've told a friend of mine, this was years ago, before, it may have been before my husband passed or not, but I said, look, if someone comes to your mind, she had a few people come to her house and say, look, how can I help you? And then she would basically kind of say, thank you so much, but I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And something kind of pricked me about that. And I said, if we don't receive the gift of their offering, then we're kind of denying that the Holy Spirit put it on their heart in the first place.
Right. You're prohibiting their blessing.
Yeah. Yes. And that, because pride very much can come in. We've got it together. And look, I have to work very hard. I have a thing within myself, and I'm not saying that I'm doing a lot of landscaping. I'm absolutely not. But since my husband passed, I feel that and maybe it's I want to prove, but I don't want the house. But I'm a real estate agent, so I have a little bit more of a feeling about that, or an affinity about that, to like, for someone to drive by and there to be neglect, and then they feel sorry for you because you can't keep up. And I'm been determined that will not be my story. And so does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, it does. It does. And I have, just come to the conclusion that okay, the yard is not going to look like it did
Mm.
when Gary took care of it. And so I just do what I can, and I try not to mention anything that I want doing, because then Matthew jumps in and does it,
Mm-hmm.
and love his heart. He runs his own business. He helps. He takes care of his own yard,
Yeah.
and helps Becca, of course, and my daughters. All work. Everybody works for me, of course. Everybody
Yes.
works, and so I do what I can, and then I have finally, at least thankfully, the Lord has given me peace about the things you can't do,
Right.
because my yard is not going to be the prettiest one on the block anymore.
Right.
But that's all right.
Yes.
Now, when Gary first died, I told Matthew, I said, Matty, I've never felt unsafe, but and so he did a few things in my house that just made the house a little more secure,
Okay.
and made me feel safe. And I've not,
Changed it.
not felt unsafe in my
Awesome.
home at
Awesome.
all. And of course, we have a wonderful neighborhood too. So.
Yes. And I have told this previously too, but sometimes we get, I don't want to say door to door salesman, but basically something to that extent. And I'm telling y'all, it was that within 6 months or something, we had a security company come knock on our door. And Ben said, I think we should get it. And I'm like, for what? Like, it's fine here. I was just kind of like flippant a little bit. It seemed like you just buy into everything. Somebody comes to the door, kind of those things. And then he passed. Maybe 6 months. And the sign on it at the time said guardian. And I'm like, were these angels unaware? Like, so that was, and I still have it. I mean, it was a 5-year contract. I renewed it because that I didn't care about it before, but I feel safer having an alarm now because it lets me know when someone's been. It lets me know if the glass breaks. And a running joke around here is that the fire department gets called at times because if I fry something, the smoke detector goes off. And they're like, "What have you cooked today, Micah? It smells pretty good." I'm like, note to self: I'm not supposed to fry any more food. Okay, that's the message.
There you go.
I'm not supposed to eat pork, evidently, or fry any food because I should not be calling you for this. So, because I can't call them directly, I have to call the security company to call them off. Anyway, a side note on some of these things, another damsel in distress moment, I call it. But it is now. Did you do the bills before?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Um, and of course, finances or something else. You lose at least a third,
Of the
of your
income.
income. Thankfully, another blessing is the fact we owned our home. We
Mm.
sold our home in Windsor when we moved here. We own our home. My car is paid for, so that's a huge blessing.
Mhm.
I haven't had to go back to work or anything like that.
Awesome.
So that's, am I well to do? No, but I didn't grow up well to do, so I
Mhm.
wouldn't know how to act anyway if I were well to do.
Mhm.
But I'm cared for.
Taken care of.
I can pay the bills and things like that.
Awesome.
And there's some things, I've cut back, but mostly, my lifestyle hasn't changed much.
And thankfully, with family, hopefully they lump you in on some things and whatever maybe to cover some things along the way. That is not everyone's story, ma'am.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. That's, and that takes us into, like ministry opportunities. Um,
So, so this has only been that was 2021. So you're coming up on 5 years.
it was 4 years in October, be
Okay.
5 this October.
Okay. Okay. And what can you say to those that, because I think that's 5 years. I will say at the 3-year mark, we started building the gym that was dedicated to him. It's a life center or whatever. But we finished it the week COVID hit.
Mm.
We got the CO, the occupancy, approval. Um, I think like the next week after March 12th or whatever day it was. And so we ended up doing drive through church for 12
Yeah.
weeks outside, and did not go into the gym for the first time, I think, until Memorial Weekend or something like that. But it caught us by surprise. It caught me by surprise that he didn't walk in the door. And I have not read a lot of grief books, but there was somewhere later on that I read that there's somehow in the brain that it's not that you exactly compartmentalize, but there is this thing about them coming back, and that they're just kind of away. And I would
Yeah.
have said, no, I know where he is. I mean, but it's not rational thinking. Okay, so
And people will say, and have said, and they mean it, with just the purest heart, he's in a better place. And I know that, up here, I know
right.
that. And I know it here too, but that doesn't help me right now.
No.
That didn't help me when they said it. And of course I didn't say that. Thank you. You smile
Yes,
and
this is
nod. And
education
there's a
here.
lot of things that, you have to just sort of get through. But like I said at first, it's just take it every day, one step at a time. You just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other, because people will say, when I went through my cancer treatment back in after Gary died, people said, "Oh, you're so brave, you're so strong, you're so courageous." I'm thinking, no, I'm not. What
Right.
choice do I have? I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm not just going to curl up and die.
Right.
You have to just keep going, one step at a time, one thing at a time. The tears come at random, odd times when a certain song comes
Yep.
on, or you read something. Now I'm opposite from you. I'm a real bibliophile. I love to read. I read anything I can get my hands on. And so I have read a lot of books about grief. There's Joan Didion's book was good. Now she's not a Christian,
Okay.
but in other ways,
Yep.
her book was helpful. C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed is
I've
excellent.
heard of that. Yep.
Oh, that's excellent. And then there's a book by I can't remember her first name. Her last name is Cooper, and it's called The Defense Rests. Her husband was a lawyer.
Okay.
And those are all excellent.
Well, we will try to link those in the show notes for those of you who are curious about other readings. And I read tons after my husband passed. It just wasn't about grief. And the first book I read was called Girls with Swords. So very different. Lisa Bevere. I don't know if she's an author. So. But anyway, I was a little bit more. I was in a lot of different books, but it was more about emotional intelligence and scripture, and just really devouring the word. I had more time in a sense, but I just felt like I needed knowledge. I didn't have the answers, and it didn't really seem like the people around me had the answers.
Yeah. If you're trying to think of something positive about being a widow, because there aren't many things, to tell you the honest truth, but I have more time now. I do in the morning, my devotional includes Old Testament reading and a New Testament reading, and usually Psalms and Proverbs, but my go-to Bible is the Max Lucado Study Bible, and so I'm reading the little inserts from all the different Christian authors and things like that. So I'm reading that, but so I do that more, and yes, I cook when I want to, and I don't when I want to, and I eat what I want when I want.
Yeah.
I have some friends that I had lost touch with because we really didn't have a whole lot in common, but and Gary, they were sort of my friend first, so Gary didn't know them very well, and I've gotten back in touch with them, and we go to brunch first Sunday after church, and we go to this little restaurant in Norfolk. It's a very eclectic place. Gary would not have liked it. I told my son-in-law, I said, you wouldn't like it either, but it's fun. It's different, and so, and of course I've made some new friends.
Awesome.
And we had a group at church. You had mentioned that. We called it Widow to Widow, and we had as many as 7 or 8 folks. But I feel like folks were fed. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
found some commonalities, and we talked out several things, and then gradually, you know, the group got smaller and smaller till there was just three of us. So we don't meet anymore, but we still have that touch. You know, we still
Yes.
have that.
Check on each
Um,
other. And she brought the three of them to our gathering last week. And the good thing is that there's some other, resources here that if y'all want to come on a Saturday to one of our gatherings at the Hunterdale Fire Department, you can. And there's still other opportunities if they are calling you and saying, "Hey, we really feel like we'd like to connect with some people or just get out of our house." So this has been so educational on some points that you have. Now, what did you do before? Were you a stay-at-home mom? What was your
Now I'm a retired nurse,
Okay.
Orion. I didn't work for a year after my first child was born. After my baby girl was born, I was only off 5 months. But then when um, Becca was about 3, I was leaving for work one day because I worked 3 to 11, and so it was a Saturday, and Gary was with them, and she was standing at the door crying, and so we talked about it, and so I stopped working for about 2 years until they both got into school.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went back. So I worked part time until they got into middle school, and then worked full time after that till I retired. I started at OBC and worked different places, and then finished at OBC. Also, I was the Centera home care coordinator at OBC
Okay.
for my last things that I did. But you mentioned, oh, excuse me, excuse me, you mentioned the event,
Yes.
and I have attended both years.
Right.
And last year, it was excellent. I didn't think it could get any better, but I really did enjoy it even more this year.
Awesome. Thank you.
Last year, it was so cute though. I think I have no psychology background, but I think that, well, I know that men and women approach things differently. I mean, if you've ever known a man, you know, your father, your husband, they're wired differently. They
Yeah.
approach things differently.
Yeah.
Last year, my group and I had 2 ladies with me last year. We sat at a table that had 2 men.
Mm.
Bless their hearts. We finally got out of them a first name and how long they'd been widowers. And it was like pulling teeth.
Mm.
They just, they talked to each other,
Yes.
but they didn't want to talk to
Very
us.
shy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I thought that was, and the ladies and I talked about that this year too. But this year, I actually made some notes.
Awesome.
Danette,
Yes,
help me.
Crawford.
Crawford.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say Cooper. I knew that wasn't right. Danette Crawford was our speaker, and she was so good. Talk about dynamic. Gee whiz. I mean, she was all over that stage. It was all I could do to keep my eyes on her. She was everywhere. Lots of energy. But the things that she said a lot that were,
yes, she
and
did.
I'm sure other people jotted down different things.
Yes.
But what I jotted down was, it's not about our now, it's about our next.
Yes.
And I think that's so hopeful.
Yes.
And so important for widows to keep in
Absolutely.
mind. Because you're not going to be where you are now forever.
That's right.
You're going to go forward. You've
Yeah.
got to. You
right.
can't stay where you are. You're going to go forward.
I love that.
And she talked about our comfort zone and our potential zone. And of course, that's 2 very different places.
Absolutely.
And so you've got to put yourself in your potential zone and get out of your comfort zone. And knowing scripture. I wrote that on this, but I'm not sure that's from then because I've been taking notes on this.
Mm-hmm.
It is written.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Jesus kept saying when the devil was trying to tempt him in the wilderness those 40 days. It is written, and he was always refuting him with scripture.
Right.
So you can use your knowledge of scripture for that. And then for today, do not focus on the bad things. Focus on the good God.
Whoa, that'll preach.
And I'm sorry, I forgot. I didn't make that up. Okay.
Okay.
I forgot where I got it, but I wrote it down, and it's legible.
Yes, it is. That may just have to be the title of it today. So can you read that one more time? The little note.
For today, do not focus on the bad things. Focus on the good God.
Absolutely. And I like to. I mean, that's really. Our mantra here at the Widow Walk is new start, new finish. As she said in the beginning of our conversation, it's hard to even reconcile to say, well, my husband died and I died. So the Amy, formerly known as, and I've met with some girlfriends. We went to Three Guys. It was the last year sometime, but two of us have seen each other a lot. One of us haven't. And we sat down and I said, should we just reintroduce ourselves? Because one was divorced and two of us had lost spouses. So we were we're in a different season, is what I'm saying. None of us are with the men we hung out with when we were hanging out. And I'm like, should we introduce ourselves as formerly known as? Because we're not these people anymore. And when you're just trekking through life, they're going to the mountains. I mean, they're just having their time. And then all of a sudden, that time was over. And I feel such an urgency, Amy. And part of why this Widow Walk is here is to, in the medical industry, we call it preventative care, proactive care. Well, I want to adopt that process into the grief community because I don't think we fully grasp. The more that we have our ducks in a row, if you want to call it, the more we can proactively walk through grief. It is not going to diminish the grief, but what I believe is that the grief can compound when you have so many layers to the process. Meaning, and she said it so greatly, well, my husband did 60%. I am so thankful. You almost feel like you're at a little bit of a deficit. Like, oh my gosh, he did so much. And then you don't really realize how much he did until they're gone. And then you realize how much you have to now do.
Well, and a lot of it is things you don't know how to do.
Right. And
what's this tool for? What are you going to call this?
Absolutely. And there's been some scary moments, let me just tell you. And I'm thankfully, I knew who to call. And they were around the corner. And so back to these right people, right time storylines. And why do I have to keep doing these interviews to validate and verify that God puts people in our path for that moment, and they're not always the people we may have expected it to be. She didn't expect that doctor to be the one, but then after the fact, she was like, "I'm so thankful you were the one." And so we're not in control, and I didn't know how much I wanted control until I lost control. Can you speak into that at all? Do you understand that part of it? Like, we have to keep surrendering to the process, surrendering. But this proactive care, or I'm calling it grief education, is the tier with the Widow Walk, is to continue to be able to really, I want to speak to the men a lot of the times because to me, we are in the South. The South still is very traditional. And that means a lot of times, not that they were the ones who always paid the bills, but typically seemed to cover more of the heavy lifting when it came to
Oh, absolutely. That's the way
decision
they're brought up.
making.
You protect,
Absolutely.
and my husband and my son-in-law are that way. Not that they would ever squelch any of my efforts or my daughter's efforts in any way.
Thank you.
But they're one of their main roles in life, other than providing.
Yes.
And of course, most everybody works, so both members of the party
are providing.
of the family provide, but protect that.
Yes.
He feels like he has to take care of his little family, and he has to take care of me down
That's
the street. He and there's nothing I can say that would make him go away.
Right.
I can say,
awesome.
I got this, and he knows I don't.
Right.
So he's always going to be
He's looking out. He's looking out for you. And that brings so much safety and peace. And you do really need that. So the more that we can get comfortable, she said that, comfortable over potential. The potential And this isn't about fear, y'all, about the potential threats. We could even say it like that. Like you're now thinking what could go wrong and trying to prevent that or prevent that. And what can happen is it boxes you in.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even want to go out because you're afraid this may happen or afraid that may happen because they were kind of your safety.
Right.
And that's real. And in the beginning, my one friend, we went to OBX and we did a rope course, and it was scary. And I was getting angry as we went along. It's like we're sweating. It's like you're hanging from this thing. The kids are young. I'm like, how did you get me on this thing?
Sounds like fun.
And I listened to a podcast later, and they said if you're walking through trauma and grief and different things like that, part of building new core memories and and like trust building is to do scary things, to do new things. And I had to go back to it. I'm like, well, you didn't know this, but I think actually it was good because we had to rely on each other. We had to lean on each other. We had to really that and to get through the course. I mean, we had to, it was a team effort to get through the course. And what happens when you get through it? You accomplished something. And so when we accomplish something, I love to say that widows and we're warriors because every day you're having to face the reality that you're saying that I'm doing this by myself. And then you remember, oh, wait, the Lord's with us. Like I'm not alone. I never really was alone, but wasn't acknowledging his help. I'm having to call on him for help way more in this season than I did before.
Absolutely. My comfort zone, is where I was obviously comfortable. My husband was uh, saw more positive potential. He was real mission minded. He went to Africa. He
Mm,
went to Poland.
wow.
He went to Peru 3 times. But his all-time favorite mission was here in Virginia, up at the Bland Ministry Center in Bland, Virginia, and that's he was always trying to get folks, no matter where we were, what church we attended, or friends, neighbors, whoever. He was always encouraging
Encouraging them.
folks to to go and tell. Um, I,
Beautiful.
I I never did any foreign missions. I've been to Bland many many times, but
And so you went with him on those missions?
well, the girls and I actually started going to Bland before he did.
Okay.
But my youngest daughter Rebecca went to Peru with him once. But like I said, he went there 3 times,
Wow.
and he developed a love for he was in the country of Zambia in Africa, and the Lozi people
Okay.
is who they visited, and he just developed a love for them. But he was very mission minded, and I like home missions.
Yes.
I have not felt led,
Okay.
to go on foreign missions, but we'll see. Lord
Well, the
might
adventure
still.
awaits. The adventure awaits. And I know that I've heard some people say that just in prayer, sometimes that even if we don't put our feet on a foreign land, our prayers can go there. And sometimes it wakes up the desire to actually put your feet there. And we have a mission. We have a church plant, if you want to call it. It's actually been there 41 years, in Bolivia, South America.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple from Franklin that was in the Rock Church in the beginning in the 70s was sent out in 1981 or 82, and they just transitioned last year. They pastored for 40 years there. And so we're in the Spanish mission. It's just kind of our flavor, if you want to call it. We've always been, um, there's been an open door, and they've had about 18 small churches come out of that.
Oh my.
And so little old Franklin has footprints all over South America. That's just one church in this community that is doing things in international lands, whether it's just in your giving. Um, okay, well, we are at 49 minutes here.
Wow.
And what would your last thoughts? This is one question you've kind of been hinting around about it. Um, but I love to ask the question, where have you seen God in your story? You know, they have that little poem about the footprints on the sand,
Mm-hmm.
and how that whole thing. Have you seen a thread of him through this whole thing in a stronger sense than before? Or as you said, your devotional time, there's more time you're giving, and growing your relationship with the Lord. What can you share with others about that?
I think I, like you say, in certain seasons of our life, of our times, we look for God more.
Right.
And when you look for Him, you're going to
Find
find
them.
Him.
It's good.
And He has sent, well, throughout my life, but I was not aware of it until recently. When you look, you find. When you seek, you find. When you ask, you get answers. And there's been, from the last 4 years, 4+ years, like you said, he just continues. It's just been a parade of the people and situations and times um, and there's been laughter and smiles, of
Mhm.
course.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's been tears too,
Yep.
but tears are okay.
Yep.
You know, he's there, and
Absolutely.
he lets himself be known. And in the quiet times, I felt badly a couple weeks ago, several weeks ago now, 3 times in one day, and it was looking back that I saw it. He sent me an opportunity to do
Wow.
something, and oh, I'm in a hurry. I got to be at this place or that place. You know, I got to be here to have lunch with somebody. I got to be here for choir, blah blah. And looking back that evening, I went, oh no, Lord, they were times when I could have been serving, could have been doing something for you
Mm.
in return for everything that you do for me.
Mm.
Oh, I was so upset with myself for the longest time. So now I'm just praying, trying to be more aware
Yep.
and listen for the still small
Really good.
voice, um, and be there. Try to be, his hands and feet when you can.
Absolutely. What a great message. We've all been there. We have those like, and so I try to tell people, when you get that, just the quicker you can do it. Time matters with some of those things, whether it's to send the text, whether it's to write the note. I know for me, when I have gotten random people who don't text regularly send me a text, it's on a day I wasn't really in the best of mood. And that's the Lord's kindness. When you're not in proximity with people and someone sends a message just to say, hey, checking on you, you're doing great, just something kind, it just pushes out those icky feelings that can come over us.
From the enemy. It's the
Absolutely.
enemy.
It absolutely is. And that's clear. And uh, one of my old phrases was, in the sending comes the mending. And so it's like the thought gets sent. Our job is to be obedient to move it through. And it doesn't matter how it hits that person, because he's the one who mends on the other end. And that is to become the vessel. That's exactly what she's saying, that we become more aware, to be open, to adjust our schedules. Some are more tight than others. Retired people may seem like they have a very flex, but I will tell you, my mother's retired and she's booked, because we're booking her schedule. So the ones who we think are retired, we are adding things onto their schedule because we want to take things off our schedule. So all that to say, they want to help us. And then what happens? There's things that the Lord is asking of them, and he loves you enough that he wants to sit and talk to you. That's really the truth of it. He wants to get to know you, just as even more than you think he does, really. And That has really done something to my heart to realize that he's good. I mean, that was her message earlier, that he's good. We're in the land of the living. There's hard things happening to our friends and family. Um, we're still walking through hard things, y'all. People are still passing away. I'm kind of tired of that, but it's not going anywhere. This is the cycle of life. Babies are being born, people are crossing over. And so, thank you for watching another episode. Please share this. If you have a story where Amy has come to comfort you, has picked you up, comment below. We want to hear just how much goodness that these locals are doing all over town. These are the angels unaware, y'all. We are living epistles. I mean, she's a person living life, walking with people, talking with people, praying with people. And a lot of this is probably done in secret. And I'm acknowledging that there's more of you doing it than we realize. And the more we realize it, the more um, grounded we feel, the more protected we feel, the more appreciated we feel, the more awareness we have of just how much good people we have in this community, how caring we have, very caring people in this community. And stay tuned for more stories with Mondays with Micah. If you want to get on the show, please contact us. We have a place on our website now where you can register. There's some questions up there that you can fill out. If you think of a widow while watching this that you feel like she needs to get on the show, send her a text, email us at the widowwalk@gmail.com. We want to get in touch with them so we can keep sharing these amazing stories of resilience, faith, some shocking suddenly moments too, and also about his grace. Bye bye.